God bless you, family. I'm a changed man for life. Thank you for stopping in and checking out my channel. Thank you for stopping in and checking out this video. If you are not yet subscribed, please take this opportunity to do so. Smash that subscribe button, ring the notification bell so that you're made aware when new content is dropped. How's everybody doing? I hope you had a blessed Sunday. Getting ready to go into this new work week. Welcome back to Lifer Talk. This is chapter 2. And I'm privileged to introduce someone that I know from back in the days. You guys know that I always like to be transparent with you. So I'll let you know up front that this is not a cold interview. It's not like I don't know this person. It's not like I don't know their story, but I want to bring her story to you. Yes, I said her. Yes, there are lifers that are women. So let me bring on my guest and allow her to introduce herself. How you doing?
I'm good.
Good
Honored
to see
to
you.
be here. Good to see you too.
Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much for being willing to share your story and your experiences with the viewers. If you caught what I said about women do life too, even myself as a lifer, it never really occurred to me that there were women doing life sentences too. When I got out and I started going to the lifer picnics, I just assumed that all the women that were there were somebody's wife, somebody's girlfriend, somebody's friend, until somebody introduced me to one and they were like, yeah, this is so-and-so. She was a lifer. She did 20, whatever. And it hit me like, oh, dang, wait a minute. There are women doing life sentences too. So again, welcome. Thank you. Let me have you introduce yourself and tell us what you caught a life sentence for and how much time you did on your life sentence.
So my name's Lisa. I was arrested for conspiracy to commit extortion with gang enhancement. We originally were fighting 61 to life. It got knocked down to 30 and 18 with Noel package deal. My co-defendant refused to sign. So we ended up taking it to trial and we lost, and I ended up with 7 to life. He got 14 to life.
Dang. So you guys had, hold on, I'm getting some reverb. Let me see what's happening here. My apologies. I think maybe I'm too close to the mic. Let me back this thing up a little bit. Okay. So you had a deal on the table that didn't have an L, but because your co-defendant refused to sign, you weren't able to take it without him. It had to be a package deal.
Absolutely.
That's
he
crazy.
Was mad that I was getting 18 and he was getting 30.
That's crazy. So how old were you at this time that you caught your life sentence?
Like 38, 39, I think.
38, 39. And what year was that?
2013.
2013. And we're now in 2025. So that's like 22 years. Did you do the whole 22 years? Are you just out?
I've been home 4 years. I went to BPH 3 times. The 3rd time I got found suitable.
After doing how long?
8.5.
8.5 years. So for the viewers that might not really know how the parole board works or how life sentences work, that's a relatively short amount of time for a lifer. Generally, lifers do 20 plus, even those that have a sentence of 7 to life, like Lisa did. I personally was with lifers that had a 7 to life, that had done 30, 40 years, 20 plus. And another thing that a lot of people might not know is that, yes, you can catch a life sentence without having a murder case. Lisa says she didn't have a murder case, but she still received a life sentence. So how old were you at the time of the crime? You said 38 or so?
Like 38, something like that, yeah.
Okay. And that's another thing, too, that is interesting and kind of different about your case, is that a lot of people are usually a lot younger when they catch a life sentence. Most people I know that caught life sentences were teenagers or early 20s. You were a little bit advanced in your age. Not to say you were old, but you know,
I was old.
For someone to be going to prison with a life sentence, that's a little bit older than is normal. So let me go back a little bit and let's talk about what I was saying about women doing life sentences. When you got to prison, was there a lot of women lifers there? Was there a lot of lifers there with you?
There were more lifers there than anything else. And with all the different groups that I was doing, it was learning like, damn, that was a toxic relationship,
Mm,
and not understanding what minimizing was. And I was like, damn, if I would have known then what I know now, I would have never been in that relationship. Did he
right.
want me to do it? No. Did he manipulate? Yeah, a little bit. Um, but I had been with this man for 6 years before we caught this charge together.
Oh, dang.
So, yeah.
That's crazy. So let me go back a little bit. Tell us a little bit about tell us where you grew up at and kind of like how you grew up. What was the lifestyle you were in? And before we even get to that, let me um, clarify something for the viewers because they might make assumptions based off of your name or how you look. You are a Native American, correct?
Mexican, Native American.
Native American Mexican mix, right? Okay, because I didn't want people to just think you were straight Mexican, or I wanted you to be able to
Oh,
let them know.
yeah.
Okay, so tell us about where you grew up and what growing up was like for you.
So I grew up in Glendale. Um, I went to Catholic school for 8 years. I grew up in a two-parent household, my two biological parents. My grandparents on both sides were very much a part of our life and raising us. Um, Things got a little bit bad, went through some child molestation, rape by family members, and I stayed away from my family. My parents ended up moving out to the Antelope Valley thinking that they were getting me away from the bad element that I started hanging out with. Well, those same parents also had the same idea of getting their kids out of there. So we all just met back up in the AV. And yeah, I started getting in trouble at 13. Yeah, stealing cars and taking them to chop shops, going to parties, started doing a lot of drugs. And I just, in and out of juvenile hall, went to placement, got pregnant at 15, had my son at 16, and pretty much straightened myself up until I caught this term.
Mm. So you mentioned coming out here from Glendale, and so were you from a neighborhood, or
No,
you were never like officially from a neighborhood,
no.
but you kicked it with that lifestyle of people, right?
Yeah, all my family is from a certain neighborhood.
Right.
Yeah,
And
so it
then
was
and then when you got out here, that was just pretty much the crowd you were drawn to because you were already used to that lifestyle, right?
absolutely.
Yeah. Good. Can you turn your mic down a little bit? Are you able to turn the volume down a little bit?
Is that good or more?
I think that's where we're getting the reverb from. Let's see how it goes. Um, so yeah, so you come out to the AV, you start partying, hanging out with people that are involved in the street lifestyle, using drugs, whatever, getting busted, stealing cars, going to placement, doing little things like that. And then you said you had your son, your first son, and then you kind of straightened up your life a little bit, right? What
Absolutely.
what brought you to a place of falling back into behaviors or lifestyle that ended up taking you to prison with a life sentence?
Hi.
Okay, sorry about that. Having some technical difficulties. Let's see if we can get it smoothed out a little bit. So Lisa was about to tell us um, how she ended up falling back into behaviors and a lifestyle that led her ultimately to having a life sentence.
Um, I had separated from my kid's dad, and um, it was threats and all kinds of crazy stuff going on with him. And I ended up meeting my son's friend, who ended up getting into a relationship with, and ultimately being my co-defendant.
Mm. And as you mentioned earlier, it was a toxic relationship, so the toxicity just spiraled you down into running amok and acting up.
Absolutely, it did.
So let's talk about you get busted for this case. You're in the county jail. Where in the county jail did they have you at?
When I first got there, I was in GP. Everything was good. We were going back and forth to court, and the DA was pissed because I was in general pop. So they snatched me up from there. ISU came in, or no, OSJ, County Jail. OSJ came in, snatched me up, and took me to mini high power. So I'm going back and forth to court. DA got pissed off again and wanted me in high power. So for the next 2.5 years that I was there, I was in high power.
And the other people that are there with you, what kind of cases do they have? Is everybody there mostly fighting life sentences? Are they fighting little cases? Is it murder cases, money laundering? What was like the predominant type of case that was around you?
It was identical to mine. Money laundering, extortion, murder. There was like 10 of us fighting basically kind of similar cases, but just different circumstances.
Right. And as you had said earlier, you had never really picked up nothing major before, right? This was like your first major
yeah.
thing you were fighting, right? That's crazy. So, and did you know you were facing life at the time?
Our second court date is when we finally had public defenders, and that's when we found out that it was 61 to life, because the original charges were conspiracy to commit murder with a gang enhancement. And I'm looking at my co-defendant like, who is it? And he's like, I thought it was you. No, I thought it was you. Later on, about 1.5 years later is when they tacked on the extortion with gang enhancement as well.
So when you realized that you're facing the possibility of a life sentence, what is your thought process like? What are you thinking? What are you feeling? Tell me a little bit about that.
When I found out it was life, I was scared to tell my family. I left 8 kids behind. My youngest was 5 when I got arrested. It was like, what did I go and do? Like, I'm never going to see my kids again. And I had to face that hard reality that was a possibility.
Right. One thing that I hear people say a lot, or that I see commented on social media when people talk about having missed time with their kids because of doing prison time. A lot of people that never lived the kind of lifestyle that we come from or have never done time, the first thing out of their mouth is, well, if you really cared about your kids, you would have never went to prison. What would you say to that? How would you respond to that?
I was doing what I needed to do to provide for my kids by all means necessary. I knew there was a possibility that it would happen, but I didn't think it was going to be a 61 to life case.
Right.
I was taking care of my kids on my own. And it wasn't that I didn't love them, but I was providing for them any way I could to keep us afloat.
Right. And a lot of people that have never been in a situation where they have to make hard choices like that really don't understand.
No.
They'll say, oh, well, you could have went and got a job and you could have done this, you could have done that. And yeah, that's all true. But when you're not in a mindset, or when you haven't had examples set for you of that, by the people that you're around, that you're hanging out with every day, it's kind of hard. We're in the lifestyle we come from. It's about immediate gratification. We want that fast money. We want that big money. We want it now. We don't got time to go to school to learn how to, get a job that pays good. We don't got time to be taking trades and all that kind of stuff. And when you're in the street and you're doing what you do, that stuff doesn't even come to mind. So Now you realize you're facing a life sentence. You're offered a deal that falls through. You end up getting sentenced to 7 to life, and you catch the chain. Where do you go for reception?
Chowchilla.
Chowchilla. And tell me about your first day in Chowchilla. This is your first time actually going to prison, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so tell me what that's like. Tell me what your first day in actual prison is like for you.
I didn't sleep that first night. I was so used to being in a cell by myself, being in high power or walk alone, housed alone. Any little noise, I was waking up. And one of the girls was also a very light sleeper. And she was like, man, you're going to be good. And I'm like, there's 7 other people in this room. How am I going to be good?
Right.
And she was like, don't trip. And I'm like, oh, I am. I am. It took a little bit getting used to. And then I'm pretty dark skinned. When I got to Chowchilla, I could actually see the veins in my feet. I was like, damn, I have veins in my feet. I went outside and I was out there maybe an hour and I came back totally sunburned from not having, I didn't hit sunlight for 3 years.
Right. So you were super pale.
Oh, pale was an understatement. Yeah, definitely. Getting used to that food was like, damn, I can't do this. Half the time I wouldn't eat because I would look at it like, I ain't eating that. Ain't no way. There's no way that's edible.
Right. Prison food is nothing nice.
No.
So you get there and is it like a cell, or it's not quite a dorm? Because you said it's 7 people. So that's more than in male prison, we got 2 to a cell. If you're in a cell, or if you're in a dorm, there's like hundreds of people.
Right.
So what is it, like a dorm, but you're in a pod?
They're actual cells. They're 8-man cells. There's 4 2-man bunks in there. You have 8 lockers in there. There's a shower and a bathroom inside the cell.
Oh, dang.
Yeah, that's at Chowchilla. CIW, they're 2-man cells.
Okay. So you get there, you are on your first day of a life sentence, you're meeting people, you're having trouble sleeping. Tell me a little bit about, because I'm learning too right now about women's prison, what it's like, you know what I mean? How is it people approach you, hit you up, where you're from? Do the other women there ask you for your paperwork? They want to know what you're busted for?
Honestly,
how does that whole thing go?
So the politicking side of it, basically, is what you're asking. They don't ask for paperwork. And I'm like, whoa, hold on. Like, I don't know who I'm sleeping next to.
Right.
I have 8 kids at home. I got grandkids at home. Like, I don't know if you're one of them.
Right.
And the women pretty much politic like by county, not by color. It's kind of weird.
That's interesting. I never heard that before.
Yeah, they politic by county.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So this is a good segue to this, because you mentioned that your family moved out here to the Antelope Valley. So the Antelope Valley is where you were getting into your dirt at. And, as I've mentioned many times on my channel, I'm from out here as well. People are going to wonder, because I wonder, Pearl Fernandez. Everybody knows everybody knows about the Gabriel Fernandez story. Everybody knows about Gabriel Fernandez. He was a young boy that was abused and murdered by his mom and the mom's boyfriend. And so you said they don't check paperwork. So I'm assuming when she pulled up to wherever she pulled up at, people probably already knew who she was.
Oh, definitely. I had just missed her.
Did you ever? Oh, okay, that's what I was going to ask you. I was going to ask you
what they call going over the wall when you go on to. So reception is on A yard. So you have B yard, C yard, and D yard. I had just missed her maybe by about a month. But yeah, I had the pleasure of running into Pearl when we were at court. Oh yeah.
What was that like? If you can talk about it.
Oh, I don't care. What are they gonna do? There was a young girl sitting there in high power. So you're locked in a cell, and they have like the little part and they put a chair in there for somebody else that's in high power. They usually put 2 of us in there. Well, they asked if they can put a suicide watch girl in there, and I'm like, damn, all right, go ahead, bring her in. So she's sitting there, and I told her, hey, man, it's not that bad. You're going to be all right. You know, you got family out there that loves you. And she's like, I know. And I was like, what's your name? And she's like, Pearl. And I was like, Fernandez? And she's like, yeah. And I look up, I said, what's up? It's me, Lisa. Remember me? Because we had run-ins out here.
Oh, you knew her in the streets.
Yeah. I had a few run-ins with her. And she looked up and she was like, I don't think I've ever seen anybody's face so happy to see metal bars between us. So,
oh, okay. I didn't realize there was a divider.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. So I started, saying a lot of things to her. I told her, there's a special place in hell for trash like her. She started crying, saying it wasn't her fault. And I was like, yeah, all right. I told her, you better hope they don't accidentally open this gate right now. And she's like, I'm shackled. And she's like, I'm helpless. And I was like, so was your son.
Right.
Well, so she starts kicking the door, and the deputy comes and he's like, what's the matter? And he's like, they put her in here with you? I was like, yeah, I didn't know who it was. And he's like, man, I said, I told her she better hope they don't accidentally open the gate. Well, he accidentally opened the gate. I was able to reach my hand in there enough and grab her by her hair, and I'm pulling her back. And she started screaming and screaming. So he's like, let go, they're coming. So I let her go, and he closed the gate. And she was actually in the same courtroom that I was in. So she went to court first, and when they came to get me for court, my bailiff was like, what happened? And I was like, what are you talking about? And he's like, did you attack her? And I was like, man, I'm shackled. How am I supposed to attack her? I'm in like a whole cage. He's like, I didn't think so. So when I walked into the courtroom, the judge also asked me, and I was like, Your Honor, I'm shackled. Like, come on now. How am I supposed to get her? There's a whole cage between us. And he's like, I didn't think so. I just had to ask. And I'm like, no, he goes, did you tell her there was a special place in hell for trash like her? And I was like, am I on record? All he could do was laugh. So yeah, they didn't put her in my holding tank anymore.
So in men's prison, they do check paperwork, and when people come with paperwork that's jacked up, there's consequences for that. Is it, even though they don't check paperwork on the women's side, if people find out that somebody has some funny style charges, is it similar? Do they get physically dealt with? Do they just get like shunned and nobody talks to them? Or how does that work?
I mean, it just depends. She got cut up pretty bad. Since, I wasn't there. I only heard stories about what happened. But yeah, she got it pretty bad. It depends on like who it is and what the charges are. There was one girl, she was nice. She was talk to everybody, real helpful. And then somebody shoots paperwork in. And she had 45 years for funny paperwork on her stepson. And it was like, damn, she came up. I said, I'm good. Can't do it. Sorry. And she's like, you're my friend. And I said, I'm your friend. Tell me what my favorite color is. Tell me how many kids I have, and tell me why I'm in prison if I'm your friend, because I don't use that word loosely, and definitely not with somebody like you.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go back to you getting there, and so now let's kind of jump ahead. You've been doing your time. At what point, if ever, do you realize that there's hope that you might go home, and that if you get involved in rehabilitation and education and that kind of stuff, that would be helpful? Or were you just like the entire time thinking, I'm never going home? Or what was that like for you?
So I was having a hard time. I was hard timing it at first. And I had talked to a lifer that was there, and she was like, look, I'm gonna
tell us real quick what that means for somebody that might be listening that doesn't know what that means, that you were hard timing it. What is that?
I was depressed. I mean, I wasn't eating. I was thinking the worst. I was like, my life's over. I'm going to do life in prison. Who cares if I get in trouble? I had no hope. I had
Right.
no hope. Everybody's telling me, damn, you got like equivalent to an LWAP. And I was like, wait, what? So Lifer pulls me to the side and she's like, look. And I go, yeah. And she goes, until you accept the fact that you might die here, your life is going to be shit. You're not going to move forward. You're not going to have the ambition to go forward. And I pondered on it all night. And it took a while. It took a while for me to finally accept, like, you're going to die in these walls. You know, once I came to the acceptance of that, I was like, all right, let's get this done. Let's see if maybe there's a possibility that one day I'll go to board and I'll go home. Well, about 2 weeks later, I got called into the counselor's office and I was signing to go to my first BPH hearing. I was like, wait a minute, I haven't even been here. Come to find out, because my actual crime was nonviolent, they doubled my credits. So I went to prison with like 7 years of credit.
Oh, dang.
So I was scheduled to go to board of parole. And I was like, wait, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I have no clue. So they were like, okay, you're going to get an LTOP, it was a pilot program. It's long-term offenders program. It was for lifers.
Right.
I got in that and they were like, oh, the baby lifer. Let's get her in this group. Let's get her in that group. And I was working and I was grouping 7 days a week. Just
tell us what that is. What is grouping?
I was doing different programs, different self-help programs. I was going to White Bison, which is the Native American 12-step program. I was doing AA. I was doing NA. I was doing criminal thinking. I was doing LTOP during the week on top of working. Just trying to improve myself, and if ever had the chance to go home, that I would be truly a different person and not the person that I was when I got there.
Right.
So I was working on myself.
And is that something that a lot of the people with life sentences are doing?
Now that lifers are given the opportunity to go home, and you can do all the groups you want, but you have to show and prove to yourself that you've changed, because they'll see right through the BS. They'll see right through it. So, I mean, like I said, you can do all the groups you want, but you have to really take the bits and pieces that apply to you and change your life, change your thinking, change everything about you. Because otherwise going to these groups is useless.
Yeah, absolutely. So in men's prison, there's different levels. You know, there's level 4, there's level 3, level 2, level 1. Do they have levels in women's prison?
Yes.
So
we have 1 through 4 as well. I was on a 4.
You're on a level 4. So what I tell people, because when I started grouping, I did a little bit on level 3, but not really, because I still didn't have any hope. I was just doing it more so to spend time, you know, off the yard or whatever. But it was when I got to a level 2 and actually watched my first lifer walk out the gate that I realized there was hope. Yeah, started really, you know, wanting change for myself, and they started grouping and all that. And I always tell people that it was within those groups on a level 2 where I started seeing the other convicts as people instead of seeing them as being Black or Asian or white or Hispanic, or seeing them as a Southerner or a Crip or a Blood or whatever. Because in these groups, when you're sharing about your trauma and your childhood and your experiences, you realize that they went through the same things. So now you have these shared experiences to bond over. Yeah. And a lot of the rules that we had on, you know, level 4 and level 3, and of course throughout the other levels as well, about, you know, everything, you stick to your own race, you don't mess with other races or whatever, you don't get the opportunity really to build friendships with other races. Was it like that there? Was being in these groups and hearing other people's stories something that you all were able to kind of bond over? Or is it more like how you said, how people weren't even really politicking over race there? It was more about county. But were you like able to see other people and hear their stories and feel compassion now for people that you probably wouldn't have otherwise?
Absolutely. I did. And because of the fact that I'm not from a neighborhood, I talked to whoever I wanted to. I don't care what color you were. If I got
Right.
along with you, cool. If I didn't, cool. I'm gonna respect you as a person. Doesn't
Right.
mean I have to like you.
Right. Absolutely. So now you're doing these groups and you're learning about yourself and you're probably starting to heal from some past wounds, or at least learning now that you have these wounds and what they come from and how to cope with them. Um, what kind of positive things do you start doing? Because now you're maybe don't necessarily have hope, but you like got hope on standby in case a chance for me comes to go home. I'm learning these things and I'm going to be able to talk about my change and all that. What are you doing like on the yard? Are you mentoring anybody? Are you just yard bumming it? How does your life change because of the inner work that you're starting to do?
So I didn't really go out and hang out on the yard. There was a girl who like took me under her wing, and she's like, "You got a chance of going home. You ain't hitting that yard. You ain't getting in trouble." Um, I didn't start the mentoring stuff until I got to CIW.
Mm,
I was actually taking like 2 different anger management classes, and my kids were very angry because of the fact, mom was gone. They were going through a lot. So everything I would learn in my anger management classes, I would break it down for them and send it to my little ones. And I would tell my mom, let them be angry. They have that right, but teach them how to be angry the correct way.
mm,
And she's like, well, it's hereditary. No, it's not. So my mom was also learning a lot of things through the groups that I was doing because I was sharing it with my family. And it was just like I would go outside and I'd walk around a little bit, do a couple laps right there on the yard. But for the most part, I stayed inside. There was too much drama going on out there. There was a lot of drugs out there, and I didn't
mm.
want no part of it. I
Right.
didn't want no part of it. I've been clean and sober 22 years. Yeah, like 22 years. So yeah,
Congratulations.
thank you. Yeah, I wanted no part of that there. Yeah, besides that, I had too much work as far as like the homework that we would get from some of the groups. And I really wanted to focus on digging deep and trying to heal myself.
Right. What did you learn about yourself doing those groups?
Damn, that I had a lot of trauma.
Right.
A lot of more trauma than I thought was trauma, because I was like, it is what it is. It happened. It happened.
Right.
Learning like minimizing. I didn't think that it was minimizing because so my codependent.
Okay, and we're back. Sorry about that, everybody. The weather over here where I'm at is a little jacked up, so I think it's interfering with my Wi-Fi. Let's see if it'll hang on strong for a little bit longer. So you were talking about learning about trauma and all the things you were learning in group. And so you started off, you said at Chowchilla, you eventually transferred to CIW, and now you're involved in positive activities. You're grouping.
I'm in college.
You're in college. You're learning about yourself. You're staying out of trouble. And you had said you went to the board once.
Right.
Right?
I got
What
a
happened at
3-year
that?
rollover. I had gotten a 3-year rollover. I had just gotten to Chowchilla. I was there maybe 10 months before I went to the board.
Mm-hmm.
So they were like, well, you need this, you need, CGA. For those that don't know, that's Criminals and Gangs Anonymous. It's like an AANA for gang members.
Right.
So I was like, all right, well, I mean, I knew I wasn't going to get found suitable right then and there. I didn't know anything that I needed to do. They asked why I didn't do anything that I got in my consultation, which that's when they take you in and they tell you, okay, you need to do this, 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 and this. This is what we want to see. I was never given that opportunity. So I had told the commissioners I never had a consultation, and they're like, yes, you did. Yes, you didn't. So they looked and they're like, oh, you didn't. They're like, well, how did you know about L-Top and everything else? I said, some of the girls on the yard were telling me, hey, you might be going soon. These are the things that you should start doing now. So he was like, all right, I'm going to give you a 3-year rollover. And I was like, damn, 3 more years. Okay. So 18 months later, by this time I'm down in CIW and I get a letter saying you're going back to board. And I'm like, wait a minute, it hasn't been 3 years. And one of the lifers there was like, it's because you're doing good. They bring you back if you're doing good. And I'm like, okay. So I go to board and I get another rollover because I hadn't finished CGA. They didn't offer CGA at CIW. So I was like, all right, well, I mean, it is what it is. And at that point too, I wasn't connecting all of my dots. And I wasn't sure how I got into this life of crime and, you know, where it started and people who influenced it and the decisions that I was making. So I was like, okay, I got more work. That's all that is. It's just going to make me a better me for when I get home. You know, 3 more years, I got this. So I was in college, I was working, I was doing groups. I was also one of the first 15 mentors for a group that they called YMO, which was Youth Mentor Organization. We were taking the younger girls coming in and be like, hey, do you have a high school diploma? Yeah, okay, let's get you a trade. Let's get you, you know, into college instead of letting them get strung out.
Right.
You know, just teaching them that even though they've made a mistake and bad choices, they can still come back from it.
Right.
So,
and were the younger women that you were mentoring, were they like, was there a lot of them that wanted to be part of that? Were they
yes, it was a
looking for
voluntary.
that?
It was voluntary. Yeah. I had one who, man, that girl was a handful. She was C over C, C over C, C over C. Once I got her as one of my mentees, she requested for me to be her mentor. And they were like, are you sure you want her? Nobody wants her. And I was like, why is everybody giving up on this kid, man? Why is everybody giving up on her? And I was like, give her to me. She got off C over C. She was going.
What is that? What's C over C?
C over C is a restriction. She had all of her privileges taken. She got to where, I don't know about in the men's prison, but with us, if you're C over C, you're in hot pink.
Dang.
Yeah, you have a hot pink, like smocks, like hospital smocks. That's what they look like. They have no TV, no fan, they have bare minimum. Like if we're back in
like C status.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So in the men's side, they just call it C status. So over there, it's C over C. Okay, yeah. The only difference is they don't put them in well, at least when I was there, they weren't putting nobody in no pink smocks.
Right. Once she started this program, she was in school every day. She used to ask the staff, hey, can I go over, you know, to Lisa's? I need help, you know, with my math. I don't know how to do it. And he was like, what? So he was letting her come over and she was just thriving. She was going to her work assignment now. She was going to school. She wasn't getting in trouble. If she was having an issue, her housing staff would call mine and be like, hey, can I send her over there? You know, she needs to, this kid is like losing it. She needs her mentor. Yeah, send her over. And that's very rare for them to let somebody from another building into a separate one.
Right.
But it was the program. The program was really working for some of the more troubled younger ones. They were seeing a whole 180-degree turnaround with them in this program.
That's dope.
Yeah.
So you're doing all that. You get told you're coming back to board, and you go back. They tell you that you need to finish some CGA, or they wanted you to do some more stuff. So that's two board hearings you've been to now.
Yeah.
Tell us about going to your third.
My third one, I was like, I didn't have my hopes up. I was like, it is what it is. I'm going to get another 3-year rollover. It is what it is, but I got this, you know. So I was like, by the time I get home, I should have my BA in business. I'll be good. I can go home. I can do this. I can do that. And it was the same commissioners that I had on my second board hearing. Usually when they deny you, they expect you to like mess up. They expect you to get 115s, just all kinds of stuff, write-ups for everything under the sun. And when he saw the building that I lived in was the worst building in the whole prison.
Mm.
And he was like, why don't you move from there? And I was like, I'm comfortable there. I said, it's not where you live, it's how you live. I had a 3.95 GPA. He was amazed by that. He had, I had chronos from, the captain. I was in the men's prison, you guys have MAC. We had WAC. And then ours got changed to Inmate Advisory Council because of the transgenders that we had. I was the only one from my whole building because everybody else quit on me. I just had a lot on my plate and I was still thriving. They found me suitable. And when he had said, congratulations, we found you suitable, I was like,
okay, hold on. Let me stop you real quick. Let me stop you. Because I want to go back, and you said something that caught my ear, that the viewers might have an interest in hearing about. You said the transgenders that were there at the prison.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about what that was like, because I've seen a lot of stuff on social media. There's stuff going on in Washington D.C. right now. There's stuff going on at the California State Capitol because there's issues with that. There's a lot going on, so I wanted to hear, because you were there. You know what I mean? I've just read about it, heard about it. Tell us what that is like. Tell us what that was about. What that's like.
So we had two there that were actual men at one time. They no longer had male working parts whatsoever. The transgenders that they had while I was there were females transitioning to males.
Okay.
Yeah, it was pretty interesting. I was very close to one of them, actually two of them, and it was like being at home with one of the guys. And if you look at them, I mean, they look just like you, mustache, goatee. And at first I was like, where the hell am I? I had to like really look like, is that a guy or is that a girl?
Right.
And I'm like, wait a minute, you're at CIW. It's a girl, I think. But when I left, they started transitioning men coming to the prisons, to the two women's prisons that still have working genitalia, male working genitalia. There are women at both prisons pregnant right now from these men. There's actually a big case going on right now that they can't charge one of them with rape because he identifies as a she, and that only a male can rape a female. So I still talk to some of the girls that are at both prisons, and they're like, it's bad. Yeah. It's bad.
That's crazy. Okay, so let's get back to you going aboard and getting found suitable, and they tell you congratulations.
I was like, I'm going home. And he's looking at me. I was like, I'm looking at my lawyer. I'm like, did he say I'm going home? And they're like, yeah, I broke down crying. I broke down crying, and it was like, I'm going home. I did this. And it was during COVID. So none of the girls could be out waiting for me like they did, the last time.
Right. Because it was during COVID, was your hearing on Zoom or was it in person?
Yes, it was. It was on Zoom.
Okay.
And it was horrible. They had like a big old monitor, and every time anybody spoke, the screen would light up. So I'm like this bouncing around. I felt like the cats with the little laser. Even the commissioner was like, don't worry. I'm having the same problem. And I'm like, okay. So it was, I came back during count. So they got me in my cell right away. And when I got out of, when count cleared, the girls were like, what happened? And I just kind of sat there, and my housing staff announced it. And he's like, Lisa's going home. And all the girls started screaming, crying. And they were like, you got it, you got it. And I hadn't signed up for the phones because I didn't know what time, I was going to be back. I didn't know how long it was going to be. So one of the girls like, call home. So I call home, and I'm like, Mom, are you sitting down? And she's like, just tell me. And I'm like, Mom, just please sit down. She's like, Lisa Marie, just tell me how long this time. And I'm like, Mom, sit down. So she puts it on speakerphone. She was living with my aunt at the time. And I was like, is she sitting down? And she's like, Yeah. And I'm like, okay. And I start crying and my mom starts bawling hysterically. And she's like, what do I do now? And I still start going shopping because I'm coming home. All you hear is dum, dum, dum. And I hear my aunt, Susie, are you okay? And I'm like, oh my God, my mom passed out, something. And she picks up the phone. She had dropped her phone and she's like, are you serious? And I said, I'm coming home, Mom. I said, but I still got to wait for the governor's signature. So don't hold your breath.
Right.
Because of my crime, I thought for sure he was he wasn't going to sign off on it.
Right.
86 days later, I was released.
So tell me what it was like so for me, when I got found suitable, and then we have, for the viewers that don't know, and if you didn't see chapter 1 of Life or Talk, where I talked to my ex-cellie, when you go to the parole board and they determine that you're suitable for parole, what they're doing is just recommending to the governor that you be released. The governor has the final say. He can go with their recommendation or he can go against it. And that's a 5-month waiting period. 4 months, 120 days for the full board to review it. And then the governor has 30 days to make his determination for a total of 5 months. So what Lisa's talking about is how she had to do that little waiting, and with all of us lifers, we go through that same thing. When the governor makes his determination and they notify the prison then notifies us that either the governor has, is not taking any action, which means he's letting you go, or if the governor takes action against you, then that means that he's going against their recommendation, and then there's a whole process for that. So how did you find out that the governor wasn't taking any action? They called me to the program office.
So I actually had I had really cool housing staff. They treated us like people. There was some COs that, they had their boundaries and it was like, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. And the other ones were like, hey man, how are you doing today? No, how are you really doing? Are you sure you're okay?
Right.
And he was like, man, they were as nervous as I was because I had been there with them all this time already. So he would check the computer every day. He comes running to my cell during count, opens the door, and he's like, shh. And I'm like, what? And he slides into my cell and he's like, I just looked. And I go, and he goes, you're going home in 3 days. I was like, what? And he's like, don't tell I told you. And I was like, are you serious? And he's like, yeah, you got a ducket coming. You're going to go see the CC1 tomorrow. You're going to go sign your paperwork. And I broke down crying. And I was like, and he goes, don't say nothing. And I was like, I'm not. He goes, but I wanted you to be prepared. Right. Get all your crying out now, get all your excitement, start giving your stuff away, whatever it is you're going to do. That way you ain't doing it at the last minute. And I'm like, okay. He was like, I don't want to see you go. And I said, what you mean you don't want to see me go? And he's like, and he's like, you've had such a positive impact on a lot of people here. He goes, I know they're going to have a hard time with you leaving because you're so positive for them and with them. I was like, damn. It was to have a CO say that was like, okay, did I truly change?
Right.
Because
once upon a time, they would have been telling you how awful you were. Absolutely. And how you should be locked up for the rest of your life and you should have no business being around other people and trying to influence anybody. And now here they are commending you for the influence you have on people and for your positive walk and for the things you're doing. So that's really awesome. So you got your ducat to go see the counselor to officially be told that you're going home. And what was that like?
It was unbelievable. I kept looking at it like, are you sure it's mine? Like, are you sure? And they're like, yeah. So I went to the counselor, signed all my paperwork. And like I said, it was during COVID. And I was mandated by the Board of Parole to go do a transitional program. So in order to go to this program, I had to be quarantined for 2 weeks. I was like, nah, I'm free. You guys can't keep me shit. I am not staying here. And they're like, no, relax. they're going to put you in a motel. I was like, I'm not spending my money on no more. And they're like, no, we're paying for it. So I was in a motel on quarantine for 2 weeks.
So when the day of your release, did the program come pick you up, or family came
No,
and pick you up? How'd that go?
they didn't allow that. The COs drove me to the motel.
Oh, dang.
Yeah, they drove me to the motel. I was in a motel in Glendale. I'm on the freeway and I'm looking, I'm like, yep, I'm home. And they're like, okay, well, there's this. And I said, I know, I grew up right here. And they're like, what? And I'm like, I grew up around here. And they're like, you grew up in Glendale? And I'm like, yeah. They're like, how did you end up in prison?
Right.
And I'm like, here we go.
I moved to the AV.
Right? If I would have stayed in Glendale, I would have been fine. So I was at the motel for the 2 weeks, and so when I paroled, I was actually in a wheelchair. I got hurt at work. I worked canteen, and I fell halfway down the ladder and popped my kneecap out of place.
Oh.
Yeah. So the COs were actually carrying, my 2 boxes, and there was a red line in the parking lot, and I stopped dead in my tracks. And I'm looking, and the one looks back, and he's like, what you doing? And I look at him, and I look down, and he's like, Lisa, you're free. You can walk over that red line. And I broke down crying.
Yeah.
And he was like, as happy as I am, you're home. And I go, yeah. He goes, I'm going to hate it that much more because I know Stephanie, which was my C over C kid. He's like, Stephanie's going to go backwards hard and fast. And it goes, you had a positive impact on a lot of those kids. And I was like, and this is the CO that would see me like just go into group. He didn't really know me on a personal level.
Right.
Never worked my building. I'd be outside. He's like, where are you off to? Group, work, school, whatever the case may be. It was interesting. So I was in the motel. The place that funded us is a program called Amity. They funded us for staying at the hotels for the quarantines that we had to do, and they brought breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So there I am.
What was your first meal? What was your first meal?
It was roast beef. It was roast beef, vegetables, and pecan pie.
Damn, that sounds bomb.
Yeah, it was. At first, I was like, am I going to be able to eat that? So they had me way in the back of the motel. So I was like, okay, well, where do I called the front office. I'm like, where do I go get the food? And they're like, oh, come to the front office. And I'm like, okay. So I'm walking over there and I look up and I'm like, oh, there's like 16 guys all along the top and all along the bottom, just standing out there. And I'm looking at them. They're all looking at me. I'm in grays just like them. So clearly I just came home from prison too. And I'm like, I'm looking at them like, oh, damn. I was like, they're really going to know that I'm from prison because I'm gonna go straight to that office to go get my food.
Right.
And yeah, they were all looking like, oh shit, or shoot, sorry. So I went and got my food. 2 of them walk up. They're like, hi, what's your name? And I'm looking at them like, you the kind of guy that got me in trouble to begin with. Let me just stay away.
Right.
Most definitely. And they're like, nah, for real, come here. And I'm like, no. And they're like, seriously. And I'm like, what? And they're like, if this dude is anywhere near your room, you let us know immediately. I was like, nah. And they're like, yeah. I was like, all right, thank you.
Right.
So
they were looking out.
Yeah. I felt like a little wounded deer in a flock of vampires.
Right.
Yeah. Seriously. I was like, uh-oh. So like 2-3 days later, I went to go get my breakfast and I seen him. I'm like, hey, and they're like, I said, can you guys like walk around at night? And they're like, why? I said, I couldn't sleep. I said, I tried closing the curtains all the way. I woke up because I felt like somebody was staring at me. And they're like, that's a gut feeling. You did time. You know what that is. And I'm like, so they were out walking around, and sure enough, they caught him back in the cut by my room.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, they caught him back there. I talked to my case manager that would come and check on me. I was like, either get me out of here or get him out of here. You're not putting me in jeopardy.
Right.
So he talked to the managers. He's like, "Can I ask why she's all the way to the back?" And he goes, "Well, I didn't think I could keep her near the guys." He's like,
Mm,
I want her in the front." So the two guys that had talked to me the first day, they put me in between both of their rooms.
okay.
So I was right in the front, and yeah, they ended up moving that other person to a
Yeah.
different location.
Right.
Yeah.
So you were in the motel. At what point did you, or did you ever get moved to the actual program's like residence? So like when I got out and I was in a transitional home, I was actually at their place, at their property. Did you all get to do that, or did you have to stay at the hotel for the entire time?
No, I was there for 2 weeks, and I actually went to the program on my birthday.
Okay.
I got there, yeah. Amity actually drove me over to the program. Um, so I got there on my birthday, did my intake, all my stuff there with them. Um, and then I spent 6 months there.
And during that time, I did 3 months in the transitional program. I was supposed to do six, but I was able to get them to see that my progress was being held up because I had everything waiting for me at home.
Uh-huh.
My mom had a place for me to stay, a job for me, car, all that stuff. So they were really holding up my progress by keeping me there. So they let me go a little early. But I know during those 3 months that I was there, for at least the first month, it was very irritating to me because in my mind, I'm free, but you guys are holding all these rules. I can't just leave. I can't just go to the store when I want. I got to get a pass
Mhm.
and I got to bring back a receipt to show I was really at the store. And it was just, it felt like still being locked up. Was that a similar experience for you?
At first it was irritating because, like you said, I'm free. Why do I got to do this? I just did this time. Let me do what I want. And it was just so they can get to know me, to make sure I wasn't going to split.
Right.
We couldn't smoke I started smoking cigarettes again when I came home. We couldn't smoke on the property, so we had to walk up and down the alley. And it was good until we saw the news one night and showing that there was a bear near where we lived. And I was like, I ain't going to smoke no more. I think I'm going to quit. I'm good.
Smokey the Bear gonna come get you.
Yeah, definitely.
That's crazy.
Um, but yeah, after a while, once you phased up in the program, I started working. I was working in Rancho Cucamonga. I started as a packer, um, packing the disposable COVID masks. And then one of the guys
Mm,
showed me how to run the machine. So I was running the machines. I was doing really well. And when it came close to me leaving, um, they had said that they didn't think I would survive out here, that I
mm,
should stay and do 6 more months there. And I'm like, nah, going home. I got
right.
kids waiting for me.
Mm,
I had to fight for custody of my youngest ones to get them out of the system. My
right.
mother put them in the system while I was in prison.
Hmm. So you do your transitional program,
Mm-hmm.
you come back out here to the AV. One thing that I hear from people a lot is that they have a misconception that because we're home, we had a life sentence and we didn't expect to come home. We get the blessing of coming home. So everything is just great. Life is just great. There's no struggles. I know for a fact that that's not the reality of it.
Mm-hmm.
But share for you. What was once you got out of the transitional program and now you're like basically on your own? What was that like? Because for me, like I said, I mentioned, I had a family. I had the support of my family. I was handed everything when I came home: place to live, job, car. Everything was waiting for me. Not everybody has it like that. So even me with that support, there were still the struggles of life. Tell me a
Mm-hmm.
little bit about what that transition was like for you and what kind of struggles did you face once you got out of the transitional program?
So I was actually supposed to go with one of my adopted aunts. And my agent said I couldn't go there because she wasn't blood related and I was a lifer. I was like, I have a job, a house, and a car.
Mm,
You're blocking my reintegration back into society.
right.
And he's like, and it's a different county. I've been telling you this. I submitted the paperwork to go to another county the day I met you. And he was very lazy. He didn't do his job. He didn't care. The least he had to do with us, the better.
Right.
So he blocked that. So I ended up having to stay in a motel for like 3 weeks in LA County. And I was going through my money that I was making while I was, working at the place in Rancho. So I was like, okay, there goes my car money. I spent it already. Um, it was, I was fortunate enough to have a good friend of mine that, I consider my sister. I was released from the program on May 25th, and I called her and I was like, I'm home. I'm getting out of the program today. She's like, good, you start work tomorrow. I'm like, what you mean I start work tomorrow? And she's like, oh, you're a cashier at my spot. And I'm like, huh? I was like, give me, and she's like, nah, you ain't got time. You ain't got a week to hang out. You start work tomorrow. I'll be there at 8 to pick you up. And I was like, okay. So, I mean, I was doing that. It was hard. I didn't have a car. So I was taking the bus. I was taking the bus everywhere. Yeah. And then I had an hour overlay in between the two buses because they missed each other by like 2 minutes. So I'm taking the bus back and forth to work because I don't want to bother anybody for a ride. Besides that, I didn't really speak to very many people when I came home because they were still doing the same thing they were doing when I left.
Right.
I couldn't get caught up. I couldn't take the chance of anything happening. So I was like, I can love you from across the street. I'll ride the bus. And so that's what I was doing. My mom was living in Vegas. She had offered me to go live with her, but they had came out with a new law as of July 1st, 2020. Any California inmates being released after that date only did a year on parole. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna go out there. I'm gonna do a year. And they were like, that's if you stay in California. If you go to another state, you're doing your whole parole time. I said, then I gotta find somewhere to live.
Right.
Yeah. So I stayed in California. My agent told me that being at the motel wasn't secured housing and I better do something before he violated me.
Cool.
So my aunt had a friend who had property and said he had a studio. I was like, I'll take it. It's in LA County. I'll take it. It was actually a shed.
Cool.
Yeah, it was an actual shed. So I was living in there. I lived there for a year. There was a restroom on the property. It wasn't in my little room, like he had said. But it was home for then, Right. Between that time, I started working as a front desk clerk at a hotel for my aunt, working crazy hours, crazy hours, midnight to 8. I would go back home, sleep for a couple of hours, and then go back to work from 4 to midnight.
Dang.
That was my daily. Yeah, that was my daily. Just saving money, trying to survive.
Right.
Trying to survive.
So, because I know you, because I know what you're doing now, what's going on with you, but I'll still ask for the viewers. So you went through that. You eventually got into a program that helped you find a better spot to live.
Absolutely.
And you were able to find a pretty good job. And so now you're doing that. Your situation has improved. And then life does what life does. Life throws us curveballs. Life throws us very harsh realities to deal with sometimes. And people if I had been on the outside looking in, I would assume, okay, you had a life sentence and now you're home and you went through some struggles at the transitional program, but you got out of there and got out on your own. And you went through some little struggles, but you were able to get on your feet and get in a good spot to live, and you got a good job. So life is just gravy and everything is just super great. But that's not reality, is it?
Can you pause it real quick?
Yeah, I got you. Okay, and we're back on. I apologize. Lisa had a very important phone call she had to take, but we're back. And we were talking about how sometimes even though from the outside looking in, we have every reason to think that life is just great. She came home from a life sentence. She overcame the struggles of the transitional program, overcame the initial struggles of being out on her own, working, doing good, having her own spot, getting her kids, dealing with all that, getting her kids out of the system, and then let you pick it up from there.
Then life takes a crazy turn. February 22nd of 2023, I get a phone call that my 20-year-old committed suicide behind his girlfriend threatening to leave him with the kids.
Damn, sorry.
And my family, we were like, how are we going to do this? It was very hard on us. Going through the motions of them investigating it as a homicide. It was a lot. It was a lot mentally. It was a lot emotionally. I did manage to stay off of drugs during that time. I did do a lot of drinking. So it was income tax time. So we all used our income taxes to lay my baby to rest. All of my kids were struggling with it. We had my son's services. It took everything I had to not physically hurt the mother of his kid. 5 days after we laid Carlos to rest, my 18-year-old Joseph committed suicide. At this point, we were like, how are we going to do this? I reverted back to who I used to be 15 years ago. My first thought was fast money, quick money. Right. I'm going to go get this because I cannot leave my son like that. I have to have a service for my son. Well, my oldest one called his dad and he's like, Dad, look at what my mom wants to do. And he's like, stop her. My oldest son's father has a lot of friends from car clubs and they put together a car show. A lot of different car clubs were going and they donated a lot of money to help me lay my son to rest. On top of that, I have family from motorcycle clubs and they put on what's called a poker run where people buy in and there's 5 stops. Yeah, 4 or 5, something like that. 5 stops, and at each stop you pick a card and the best hand at the end wins the pot of money that you pay to go on this poker run.
Right.
A lot of people came by donating. A lot of people that couldn't stay at the poker run still donated money. And between the two, I was able to lay my second child to rest without having to revert back to my old ways.
Right.
It was very hard. I still struggle with it. Their anniversaries are coming up next month and in March. I have pictures of my boys all over, the house, on my phone. I have pictures of my sons at work. And it's a hard reminder of mental health is real.
Absolutely.
It's real. People don't know what to say. They just kind of stand there and look at you. And it's not that they do it intentionally, but as a parent, they don't know what to say.
Right.
Which I understand because a friend of mine had lost her daughter. And I was like, what do I say to her? Not knowing that I myself would be in her shoes 5 days later.
Dang.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
See, now I'm stuck. I don't know what to say. And that's, you know what I mean?
But you were there with me through it all. You know what I mean? You reached out to people I didn't even know were, sending money to the GoFundMe to help as best as they could. It was just an emotional process,
Sure.
we're still going through it.
Right.
Some people are like, oh, you're still grieving. Well, To you,
Yeah.
it might have been 2 years. To me, it's every day.
Right.
You know, there's days that I wake up and I'm good, and there's days that I wake up crying. It's a roller coaster.
Sure.
It's a roller coaster. I mean, there's times that I've broken down at work, and, you know, some of my coworkers will come outside with me and, come on, let's go for a walk. Are you okay? You know, what were they like? What was their favorite thing? So I have a very strong support system at work. Very
Right.
strong support system. Yeah.
Outside of that support system, just within yourself, where do you draw your strength from? Because you've overcome a lot in your life overall, but especially this particular heartache. I can't even imagine. Like, I know for me as a person of faith, that's where when I go through stuff, that's where I draw my strength from, and that's where I go to get my resiliency. Where do your strength come from? Where does your motivation to keep pushing and all that come from?
My other kids and my grandkids. I have 6 other kids, and I have 13 grandkids.
Oh, dang.
Yeah, 13 and counting.
13 and counting.
13 and counting. I spent so much time away from them that when I came home, I told myself, never again.
Right.
I will not leave them again.
Right.
Just knowing that I have to be the best version of me for them and set an example of what it is to be a good person instead of the person that I used to be.
Right.
So I draw my strength because of them. Without
Right.
them, I know where I would be, and it wouldn't be a good place.
Indeed. So we're going to get ready to start wrapping up a little bit. Before we do, I already know what you do for work, but why don't you tell the viewers what you're doing, what you're up to now, what you do for work, and what you got going on?
So I started off as a mentor and case manager for 18 to 26-year-olds that were formerly incarcerated, teaching them a trauma-based curriculum. Doing what I did in prison.
Right.
Giving back. My thing was giving back to somebody else's child because there were people out here taking care of mine.
Right.
So today I am now a case manager for a program for men and women that are returning home from prison 18 months or less and are employed. It's a housing stability program. I'm a community healthcare worker / case manager, and I love it.
Imagine that.
Imagine that.
Who would have ever thought?
You know, one of my close friends tells me, he's like, you don't know how proud I am of you. And I just looked at him and I'm like, huh? And he's like, you know, I don't use that word. And I said, yeah, I know. And he's like, if I can truly say that I'm proud of somebody, it's you. He goes, I don't know how you're still standing. I don't know how you do it. He says, but you are the epitome of rehabilitation. And I'm proud of you. He goes, and not because you went to prison and did all this. He goes, but just you've changed the person that you are.
Right.
You're not the same person that left. And I'm like, I can't be. You know, I refuse to be.
Right.
So yeah, he's like, did you ever think that you know, helping those girls in prison would turn into a career? And I was like, no, never in a million years did I think that. Right. But it's so I housed one of my participants last week. He's actually in a custody battle for his son. He just came home from prison in September. He's working. He just got his apartment last week, and just seeing the emotions that he experienced when they handed him those keys is what was so satisfying. Like, I am truly helping change somebody's life for the better.
Right. That's amazing.
So, yeah.
At one point, people like us were harming people's lives and
absolutely
destroying people's lives. And especially in my case, you know, having a murder case, I took somebody's life. I destroyed their family, messed up my family. So to be, you know, to see you and for myself to also be in a position where we actually get paid to help people. That's a pretty awesome thing.
It is. It is.
Before we wrap up, I want to ask you two questions. It's the same,
Yes, I
very
had fun
similar
in
two
prison.
questions. No, that's not what I was going to ask you. I'm going to ask you two questions. I'll ask you one and you can answer, and then I'll ask you the other one. If you could talk to women who find themselves in a situation like you were in a toxic relationship where the person they're in a relationship with has them just out there doing things that they know aren't right, but they're so embedded in the relationship that they do it anyway. What advice would you give to them?
That's a hard one because you're not going to stop until you're ready to. It's just like with being on drugs. You're so engulfed and wrapped up in this individual and thinking that they love you and you're doing it for them, until you realize that it is a toxic relationship. You're going to keep continuing to do it. I mean, I can tell them my story. I can tell them what I learned. I can tell them what I went through. But ultimately, it's hoping that they take the advice.
Right. And a question that we will close out with: go back and give 15-year-old Lisa some advice. What would you tell your 15-year-old self?
Follow your head because your heart will get you in trouble.
Deep. Deep question. Thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for sharing your heart with us. Thank you for sharing your experiences with us. I know that people will be people that don't even know you are going to be proud of you to hear the change in you. People that you do know are going to be like, oh, dang, she went on a YouTube channel and talked, and people are probably going to be calling you like, what the heck was that about? How'd you end up on there?
Right.
But thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. I appreciate your honesty. I appreciate you, who you are now.
Thank you.
The way you live your life. I'm proud. I'm also proud of you. I'm proud to be your friend. I see the change in you. I see, everything you're doing, and you really are doing great. You should be proud of yourself. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time. That does it, everybody, for chapter 2 of Lifer Talk. For Lisa, for myself, Change Man for Life. We're about to wrap it up. Thank you for tuning in. Hope to see you on the next one. Jesus loves you, and so do I. God bless you. I'm out.